we're going to go over how to add enemies to your world. So the first thing that we're going to want to do is go to sprites, create a new class, and this class is going to be called enemy. You can call it anything that you'd like, really, but this is more of a generic class that you'll want. And this will extend sprite, which means that we will be able to create some bodies for this sprite. We'll want to start with a constructor to say what's going to be created initially when this enemy is created. So the first thing that we'll want to do is we'll want to define a body for this enemy so that it can collide with other things. Now it's showing as red right now because we haven't created the method define body, so we'll want to go ahead and say public void define body, and then we're going to do a lot of the same things that player did, so we can just go ahead and copy player's define body. One of the things that we have to be careful about is that I changed from one of the previous lessons. I changed user data to this, and this means this class or this object. So instead of putting the player ID in the data, we're now just going to put the whole object in the data. That way we'll be able to get it out in some of the collisions. So just for you to keep that in mind. So then we're going to go here, we're going to put this in enemy, and then it's going to tell us that we don't have access to the world and we don't have a body. So we're going to have to create those two things. So we'll say private type world, variable called world, and then a private variable of type body called box2d body. And then we need access to the world whenever this enemy is created, so we're going to get access through the constructor, and we're going to say that this class's world variable equals to the world reference that's coming from the constructor here. So then everything else is satisfied, and this seems to be okay. So if we run this, let's see if we are able to see the body on the screen. Currently you don't see the body on the screen. There's no outline of a circle. So there's a few things that we are missing. First, we need to add this enemy to the world. We need to create it in that world. So we're going to go here, we're going to create a private variable of type enemy, which we just created, and we're going to call this variable Goomba. Goomba is what's usually known as one of the little enemies in Mario. So then we're going to say Goomba equals a new enemy, and we're going to go with world. And if we run this right now, you're going to notice that this is supposed to be the Goomba, and it sort of came out of Mario, which is not exactly what we want. We want it to be able to be placed in whatever spot that we want, and we want to create many Goombas, and we want to be able to say where each one of those goes. So currently we're setting the position of this body 3232, which is the same as player, so they're both being placed in the same spot. So we want to change this to something different, and we actually want to give the user the choice of where they'll set this. So we're going to do a couple of things. We're going to set position of this sprite to the x and y that the user gives us, and then we can get this sprite's x and this sprite's y in the define body method, so that we're able to use those values that the user set. Then we're going to go back to our world, and because we changed the constructor, now we have to give it a few values of where it should start. So I'm going to give it 50 and 30, and if I wanted to create two Goombas, then it would be pretty easy. So then we go here, we show that. Now 50 and 30 is going to show just in front of Mario, which is nice. And we could create another Goomba, say at, we'll say private enemy Goomba 2, and then we'll say Goomba 2 equals new enemy world 7030, which would now create two Goombas at two different spots with the same amount of code. So we have here our two Goombas, one after another. And with this, you'd be able to create as many as you need. So after doing that, there's a couple of things that we'll want to do. Now we want to add a sprite to this enemy so that it shows as what the graphics are supposed to look like. So we are going to create a texture region. Now a texture region is what's usually known as just the graphics for one of these sprites, and we're going to call that standing. So there's going to be different texture regions for different positions. And what we're going to do is that we're going to say standing will equal to a new texture region, and this will come from our atlas. So you'll want to say like screen.getAtlas, but we don't have access to the screen. We don't have access to the level. So we're going to create a new variable called level1 screen. We're going to go back here and we're going to say this and this, because this is a screen. So we're just going to say this screen and this screen, pass it through. They're going to come in here through the constructor, and then we'll be able to say this screen.getAtlas, and then from that atlas we're going to find a region, and from that region we're going to find the Goomba. So the Goomba region is, if we clicked on our atlas over here, we'll notice that there's a Goomba region. So we can just say get the graphics from that region, and then we're going to say at that region start at 0, 0, and get some graphic that's 16 by 16 in height and width. Once we've got that, then we'll be able to set our bounds. So setting bounds for this sprite, we'll just get the sprite's X, the sprite's Y, and then we're going to say 16 by 16 is the bounds of the sprite. And then we're going to set our region. So we're going to set our texture, our graphic, to the standing graphic that we've been able to upload. So because we've done this, we can go ahead and run it and see if we can show it on the screen. And the textures are still not showing. And there's a couple of reasons why the textures are not showing. First, we are not drawing this enemy in level 1. So we're creating it, but we're not drawing the graphics for it. If you notice here that we have this batch, this batch is opened up, but it's only drawing the player. So we're going to want to draw Goomba draw my game batch. So Sprite has a draw method that needs to know which batch it should put all of its graphics into. So we pass in the batch into the draw method for this sprite, and now it should try to draw itself. Now one of the things that we get is that one of them is drawn. Definitely it's not attached to the body. If I was to push this, I can push the bodies out of the way, but then whatever was drawn at some position and it's not updating. And the second Goomba is also not drawing. So what I would want to do is say Goomba2.draw my game. So draw yourself in the game's batch. Doing this, I'm still not going to get two Goombas updating, but at least I have two Goombas showing up on the screen, which is exactly what I'd like. So now we're going to go ahead and update the Goomba. You see here that we've updated the player before. So ideally we do Goomba.update, but there is no update method for Goomba. So we're going to have to create that first. So let's go to enemy and let's create a public void update and float. And this is delta time, and then what we're going to do is we are going to update the position of the fixture, or sorry, the position of the drawn sprite. So we're going to say set position. So we're going to set it to a new position, and then we're going to get the body's position, we're going to get the body's X position, and then we're going to get the body's Y position. Get position dot Y. So now that we've got this set position, we will go to the level and say Goomba.update itself. So it's going to update the positions for Goomba and Goomba 2. And we're going to say DT, which is just a float that comes in. And then once we play this, we're going to notice that the positions get updated right now, but they're just completely wrong. They're not quite in the spot that we want. So what's happening is that our positions are quite a bit off, and what we are saying is we were getting the bodies X and Y, which is 0, 0, and we are updating the images 0, 0 at that spot. So the images 0, 0 is the bottom left corner. The body 0, 0 is right at the center. So then you end up with the bottom left corner being right at the center, which is absolutely not what you want. So one of the things to be able to fix that is we're going to do a little math. So first we are going to subtract from the X, we're going to subtract the width, and from the Y we're going to subtract the height. And let's see how that works for us. So now that we subtracted the width and height, now what's happening is that we went down the amount of width, we went right the amount of, or left the amount of height, and we went way too much. So we actually want to go half the amount of width, half the amount of height, so that we go from this corner to this corner as opposed to this corner all the way down here. So we're going to divide the width by 2, and we're going to divide the height by 2, and that should show our Goombas right inside the circle, and then our Goombas will be able to move along pretty nicely.